thank you everyone for joining us today. We very gladly have Stephanie Bumstead from NovaCare Rehabilitation. She is a physical therapy assistant. So glad to have you here today as we talk about the jobs of physical therapy and what that looks like. Guests are going to be muted during this meeting. Please use the chat feature if you have any questions, and this session will be recorded. So Stephanie, I just wanted to kind of get started. When you were in middle school and high school, did you ever think that when you grew up, you would be where you are today as a physical therapy assistant?
Kind of. When I was in high school, I was an athletic trainer's assistant. So I stood on the sidelines at most of the sports practices, and for the men's sports, I played my own female sports, but the men's sports, I was like the helper to the athletic trainer. And so I kind of wanted to go into something like that, but then I wasn't quite sure how to get there. So I started college just at MCC. And as I was going through my prereqs and trying to figure things out, a few different things happened in my life. And so I stopped going to school altogether, and I was working at a restaurant as a server and a bartender, doing that for a few years, working full time. And then I was able to go back to school and finish out my associate's degree. And back then they had an associate's in food and beverage management. So I completed that degree and continued working in that field for, probably 20 years as manager, or I opened a few restaurants, and then I went into the sales field for a while, and I just really didn't like the sales field at all. So I started to explore this opportunity, and I found out of what a physical therapist assistant was, and it just really spoke to me. So I applied for the program, got in, went through that, and just started it as my second career later on in life.
Wow. And it sounds
traditional.
Yeah, you know, I was just going to say, many times our career path is more like a jump from A to L to B to Z, back to C. It's never really an A, B, C, D path. Sometimes our career paths do take us a roundabout, but you have such a diverse background. And you mentioned that in high school, you were kind of a sports trainer on the sidelines. Did that, looking back, do you think that opportunity that you had helped to influence your decision later on?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I always liked being around the athletes, and I liked the idea of strengthening and conditioning. I liked being able to see how, when you had an injury, the different things you can do to correct that injury and to make yourself better and stronger and come back to sport or whatever your daily activities are, and be able to complete whatever makes your day happy to you. And that's what I really liked about it in high school. And then that's, of course, what I really like about my job every day now.
Awesome. And you talked about your days in college. You said you went to MCC now, and you got the in hospitality. Now, when you went back for physical therapy, what kind of schooling did you go for, or training for that particular part?
For the physical therapy assistant, Baker College of Muskegon is the only one in this area that has the program. There's a couple other Baker College campuses that also offer the program. And then I think up north in Michigan, there's a few other smaller colleges that also offer it, but it's quite limited in the state who offers the program. And you also want to make sure that they're an accredited program, because it doesn't count for licensureship if you don't have your accreditation or your degree from accredited college. So Baker College of Muskegon did have that. And I spoke with the academic counselor there, and I was very close to having all of my prerequisites met. So I had to do a few other classes. I needed to take like anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 with both labs. I had to complete a kinesiology course, and then there's like a few math and English, those basic courses that need to be done too. And then you can apply to get into the program. And once you're in the program, it's very focused. It's all physical therapist assistant related courses like therapeutic exercise. There's, patho and neuro and all of those things. So you learn a lot about the body and the mechanics, and also what makes up our organs and how they work and why it's important and what works together. And that's like a 2.5-year program. Once you're in, it took a little over 2 years. The last 16 weeks, the whole last semester is in the field training. You do 2 8-week rotations, 1 inpatient, 1 outpatient, and get hands-on training for 8 weeks, 40 hours a week at each location. And then after that, you sign up to take your state boards. And once you pass your state boards, you're licensed and certified, and you're ready to go.
I think that's awesome too, that you also reference that, your career path started out in hospitality. I'm wondering if any of that training or that experience you had in hospitality, how that may have translated also to your work as a physical therapy assistant. Thinking some of our students, they might start down one career path and make a change, much like you did, and how maybe some of that training can also help them in what you did as a physical therapy assistant.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think some of the things that are the same is like the ability to talk to people one-on-one and to create conversations, because you are in people's space. In the clinic that I'm working in right now at NovaCare, we do 1-hour appointments. And so you get your patient list, and when that patient comes through the door, you're with them for an hour working through their exercises, doing their modalities, all of that fun stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot of quiet time. So you make small talk, and you have to multitask, and you have to stay organized, and you have to pre-plan and things like that. And I think a lot of the things that I learned working in hospitality for so long, just the courteousness and the prep that goes into working with people, and knowing how to talk to them, being respectful, being kind and sometimes silly, being encouraging and helping them move forward. All of those things are important. And I think what probably the one-on-one communication with strangers that eventually become your friends as you're working with them is the number one thing that I took from hospitality to here.
Oh, that's good to be able to understand that sometimes, even as students might be working at Burger King or McDonald's or in hospitality right now, many of those jobs are very open to our students in high school.
Mm-hmm.
How those skills that you're learning can be translated in different ways. So that is good to hear. I'm gonna just take a pause right now and see if we have any questions from anybody in our chat that might have been generated. Megan, do you have any at this time?
I do. I have one question for Stephanie that came in. That it came on the heels of her talking about the classes she was taking in her physical therapy programming. And the question is this: what were some of your favorite classes in the PT assistant program that you were taking, and why?
Oh, goodness. I think my favorite one was the neuro classes. I was very interested in actually going into the neuro portion, because there's all sorts of different fields you can specialize in after you're finished with your basic training or once you get your license. And while I was going through school, was super interested in the neuro. I thought it was crazy cool how the brain works, and if there's one little missed connection or a blood clot creates some damage, or, you know, somebody has a stroke or a heart attack, how all of that changes the way your entire body works. I found that super interesting. And it was intense information, and it was difficult, and I had to study a lot in order to get through that class, but it was so intriguing and so much fun. I didn't end up going into that field. I'm in outpatient physical therapy, which I absolutely love, but we do have neuro patients that come in, so I get to see that and work with that as well. But I think that was probably my favorite. I also really like, there's some fun ones like functional activity is taking a basic daily activity that you would do that you probably don't even think about, like putting dishes up in a cupboard. Well, if somebody has a total shoulder replacement, and that's one of the things that obviously you have to do every day, or every couple of days maybe,
Yeah.
being able to simulate that motion and the weight of the dishes and going up over your head, and showing them that, yes, this exercise doesn't seem like too much right now, but how important that is, because how many times do we reach with something that's weighted up over our head just to get through our every single day? So that was a fun class too, because it really makes you think outside of the box.
That's great. I know some of those classes really impact our decisions and how we move forward. Megan, did you have any other questions?
We do have one more question if we've got time. And just so Stephanie has some context, we have some students on our Zoom today that are enrolled in our Career Tech Center, in our Allied Health Program or Health Science Academy. And the question is, what advice would you give to our juniors and seniors who would like to continue in the medical field?
I think I was very surprised when I started looking at what was available as a job for the medical field. So I would investigate that more. If you're interested in allied health, there are so many things that go into, you know, being able to perform a surgery, or being a regular doctor's visit, or therapy, or, you know, there's so many different people that you come in contact with, from the point of injury to the, you know, point of being freed to go back to your regular daily living, to explore all the different opportunities that are out there for you, even if you just kind of read through a list and see what jumps out at you. I'm not one that really likes the blood and the gross wounds and things like that. That kind of makes my stomach turn a little bit. So I could never be a nurse, but I always loved allied health. I always loved the idea of working with people. So just finding the niche that worked for me was what was super important. I think, like we had talked about earlier, once you get started into a program or start working down through that field, you might say, you know what, this isn't the right thing for me, but these 5 things are what I really like about this job, and be able to find something that fits you a little bit better, but is still within the allied health field.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Stephanie. Healthcare is so vast. And like you said, you might not like the blood and guts part of some things that come, like surgery or something like that, but there's administrative, there's IT, there's things that you're doing with patient care that don't involve maybe some of those things. So it really pays to investigate. Kind of give us, Stephanie, an idea of what a day in the life of Stephanie, the physical therapy assistant, is like.
I work Monday through Friday, typically like a 9 to 5 type schedule, which is really, really nice for me. I come in the morning, I get my patient list. We have one PT here at this clinic. Her name's Katie. So she does all the initial evals, and then she creates a plan of care for each patient. And my role as the physical therapist assistant is to follow through with her plan of care. So I might get a patient, if it's their 2nd or 5th or 10th visit here, I'm making sure I work with them through their hour that they're here for, making sure that they're doing all their activities with proper body mechanics, that if the activity is getting super easy, I can make it a little bit more difficult or challenging them, or maybe they're done with that and they're ready to move on to something else. I provide manual therapy, modalities, different things like that. We do joint mobs and stretching, and just it's so variable on what our treatment plan is, because it really depends on the patient and the patient's goals and the patient's injuries and that type of thing. But you just do that several times throughout the day. I think today I started at 8. I'll be here until 6 o'clock tonight, and I have 12 patients on my caseload, and they range from joint replacements. I have an MS patient. I have, let me think. I have somebody who has chronic migraines, so they vary all over the place. Sometimes people get injured at work and they have to come in, and it's my job to continue PT to make sure that if the plan of care needs to change, that she directs me in that way. Or if I have any questions like, hey, can I try this new thing with them? She always gives me, the yes or no or thumbs up. And so you stay in contact with your superior and kind of follow their plan of care and follow along with what the patient needs are and wants are. Some of our patients are in here are student athletes, and they're trying to return to sport. They want to make sure they're in a baseball field this spring. And they're 90 years old, and they're replaced, and they just really want to be able to live comfortably for the last, year of their
Right.
or do anything crazy.
Yeah, it seems like it's a very team approach. You have to work very closely with the physical therapist to make sure, like you said, you're following that plan. What is what would you say is the toughest thing about your job, and what is the most rewarding thing about your job?
Rewarding is the easiest part. That's or not the easiest thing to do, but the easiest answer, I guess. You get to see people's progression. You get to see somebody who maybe wasn't able to lift their arm even a little bit away from their body to be able to have full range of motion and lift their arms up over their head, or they're walking better, or they are able to return to sport. So just seeing the patient progress and accomplish their goals is the greatest part of the job. And you also build a lot of really great relationships in it. We have a lot of fun here. The most challenging part is probably learning your patients when they first come through, because everybody has a different personality type. And so you have to kind of be a chameleon and create yourself to be what they need you to be, because it's not about me when I'm working with my patients, it's about them. So if they need me to be their cheerleader and keep encouraging them, I'll be that. Some people want me to be quiet. Some people are more serious and they want to talk about what's going on in the news while they're here. Other people, you just have to learn who you're working with, and at the same time be able to watch what they're doing, make sure they're doing it appropriately, and they're not going to re-injure themselves.
And what are some of the tools? Okay, and what are some of the tools or technologies that you might use in your career as a physical therapy assistant?
On a daily basis, we use things like electrical stimulation, ultrasound. We use iontophoresis, hot and cold packs, things like that. We use goniometers as our measuring tool, so we can measure how great a joint is moving or how little. We use grip strength and pinch strength techniques. We use all sorts of different computer systems. We have, it's called Therapy Source is the one that we use. So we document on that, our schedules on that. We use a lot of Excel and Word and Outlook, those types of programs. And probably that's the most basic part of it. A lot of our work is, gym equipment. A lot of our work is with our hands and our bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you say, for our students out there, what would you say are some of the needed qualities that would be looked for when hiring a physical therapy assistant?
I think you have to be curious, and you have to be able to multitask, think on your feet. You have to be able to stay organized, and just be interested. You want to be interested in the people that you're working with and what their goals are. You have to be cautious with, patient safety and things like that. So you just want to make sure that you're the type of person you don't mind touching people, because it's a very hands-on profession. You want to be able to be in people's close personal spaces, because you are very close with them a lot of times. And just be a people person where you like to talk to people. You don't necessarily have to be an extroverted type person, but just be able to feel comfortable in a space where you're, you have no idea who you're going to be working with that day, but that's okay.
That is really good information, Stephanie. And I'm going to take a pause now. And Mrs. Bayard-Kraba, do we have any other questions from our audience today?
We do actually, and we mentioned a little bit already, Stephanie, on this question, but I'm wondering if you could extend it a little bit. The question in its general form is, what is the difference between a physical therapist and a physical therapist assistant? And you had mentioned already that you have a physical therapist. There's one at NovaCare, and that you work to fulfill her care plans, right? And we heard that really great description. I'm just wondering, maybe extend it a little bit for our students on our call. Is there more than one assistant like yourself pulling off those plans? And when you work with your, let's say, 12 patients every day, is there more than one of you, right? Is there more than one assistant working with that one physical therapist?
Yes. Actually, so Katie is a physical therapist, and to be a physical therapist right now is a doctorate degree. There are limited schools in Michigan. You can go out of state, obviously, but there are limited schools in Michigan that offer that program as well. So once you are ready to apply for the program, depending on where you took your undergrad studies, you then have to find the school that offers the PT program and then apply. And it is limited, like they only take a limited number of students per semester. So both PT and PTA programs are a little bit difficult to get into. They're not, I made it in, so that's pretty awesome, but they're not super hard, but they're just like, they allow so many students per semester. So it's a doctorate degree, so it's several years. When you walk out, you have your doctorate in physical therapy, and like Katie knows so much more than I do. She does all the initial evals. So when a new patient comes in, she does the interviewing with them and then takes measurements. She'll do manual muscle testing and GONI measurements. She'll find out their injury and how it happened and what they have done so far in order to make that injury better. She talks about their goals, and then with all of that information, she creates a plan of care for them. When she doesn't have an initial eval, she also has daily visits. So people who have been there multiple times, then she will do their daily visit with them as well. A patient may come in 10 times, a patient may come in 50 times, really depending on what their ailment is. So their extra visits, or me, or another therapist here in Bridget. So the physical therapist assistant program, once you get into the program, is two and a half years. And it's an associate's degree now, but when I was going through the program, they were talking about extending it into a bachelor's degree. So it may be a little bit longer in the next couple of years. I'm not quite sure. I haven't heard if they were gonna for real do that or not. But there's two of us here, and so all three of us have our own caseload each day. So I may have my 12 patients, Bridget might have her 12 patients, and Katie might have her 12 patients. But the way that we work out of this particular clinic, I don't just take care of my patient and ignore everybody else that's going on in the gym. Like we kind of bounce back and forth off of each other. And if my patient maybe is riding a bike for 10 minutes, they don't need me to sit there and help them pedal the bike. So I might help one of the other patients do something, or if, maybe there's a patient that has a very difficult time walking and it might take two people to guard them, I can step aside from my patient and go help bridge their patient if they need it, different things like that. So it's more of a tag team approach that we have at this clinic in particular. Does that answer the question?
That was fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michelle, I just have one last question. Can I ask a last question that popped up?
Yes, please do. We want to make sure we get those over it.
Much of what you have described, Stephanie, is customer service, right, and dealing with your patients. And the question is this, as I'm sure it happens from time to time, how do you deal with difficult patients?
A lot of times I just smile and count down the minutes of the hour. No, I'm kidding. I think you tend to learn your patients. Like they all have their different needs and their different forms of encouragement. Sometimes I've had a patient in here who was very unhappy that he had to come here, but it was ordered for him to do so. But if you just talk to him like, hey, I didn't make you come here, so let's work together and let's make you better so you can go back to your way of living. And he responded very well to that. Sometimes I try to draw out of them what it is that they're looking for out of their physical therapy experience. Maybe they're, how do I want to say this? A lot of times when our post-surgical patients come in, they're very unhappy. They're in a lot of pain. They are not themselves. They're probably on some type of painkiller that was prescribed to them to help them get through the first couple of days after surgery. And now we're taking their body part that was just beat on and moving it around in a way that they don't even want to be touched or moved. And we're forcing them into a motion they don't want to do. So you just use encouraging words and kindness. And, a lot of times we use laughter at this clinic. Like this is a very happy place here. So we kind of joke around and, hey, this is going to get better. And, and then as they start to heal and as they start to make it through the next couple of weeks, they see that they are improving and they see that they're getting back to normal. And then those words of encouragement go further. So if some people are just challenging and they, we have had a few that have come into this clinic that if they didn't respond well to me and my personality type, maybe they would work with Bridget for a visit or two, and maybe they responded well to her because we're all a little bit different. Katie, we kind of try to make adjustments in order for our patients to get their needs met. Does that make sense?
No, that does. And that is great advice and information. This has been very full of information for us to learn about your role as a physical therapy assistant. I appreciate you taking the time today. We will be following up with those that attended with some additional information that I'll be sending in an email. Thank you also to my co-host, Megan Byard-Caraba, for joining us and letting us know those questions that came up in the chat. Stephanie, one last thing. What would be a piece of advice that you would give students just as they're navigating middle school, high school? What would be that piece of advice you would share with them?
Do what is fun for you. I have a senior right now who's very scared about going off to college. She has picked her major, she's picked her school, but she still is kind of, did I make the right choice? And it's huge. It's a huge choice, but you're young and you have so much life ahead of you that even if you start it and it wasn't the right thing and you have to change, that's okay. or once you work in it for several years, like me, and you say, it's time for me to make a change and do something that really speaks to me, then that's okay too. Like, there's really no wrong answer as long as you're trying your best to make the best life for yourself. And always remember that it's your life and not anybody else's. So a lot of people want to give you advice to, oh, you'd be really good at this, or I think you should follow in these footsteps or something like that. But you really have to do what it is that you want to do, whatever that may be.
Great advice. Well, thank you for joining us today, Stephanie. I really appreciate it. And for those of you that may not have been able to listen in to all of this, this is recorded, so you'll be able to view it, or also you can share it with others. Stephanie, again, thank you for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. And for those of you, check us on our next Future Focus series.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.